Hello, and welcome to IAB There, our regular streaming show in which we connect the digital advertising ecosystem. I'm Cheryl Goldstein, EVP, Chief Industry Growth Officer here at the IAB. Today's episode of IAB There is going to be a little bit different. Today, I want to introduce our newest addition to the IAB family, Pam Zucker, who has joined us as the new Chief Strategy Officer. She's a respected veteran of the media and marketing industry, a proven media strategist across digital, programmatic, and even traditional platforms. And we are really thrilled to have her join us. I've known Pam for a while. I know many of you out there know her as well. And if you don't, here is your chance to get to meet her. So why don't we welcome Pam to the screen.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Pam.
Hi, it's great to be here, Cheryl.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to have you here, part of this team. So before we dive into your role as the Chief Strategy Officer here at the IAB, let's just take a step back, talk a little bit about your career journey. How did you get into the business in the first place? Like, where'd you go to school? You graduated, and how did you get in?
So from the beginning.
Yeah.
So the story starts that I grew up in Miami, and I wanted something really different. I've always loved adventure. And so I went to school in Minnesota, right? I had never seen snow when I went to school. The first time it snowed, I slipped and broke my ankle because I didn't know it was going to be icy. So that's kind of the start. I knew I wanted to get into advertising. It always intrigued me. So after school, I came to New York and I got a job at a media agency. I worked at DMB&B, which is Incarnations, that is now part of Publicis Media.
Right.
I started on the planning side. And I think the planning side gives a great introduction to the fundamentals of media. You learn about each specific channel. You learn about how they combine and interact together and what that all means. And then you really learn the importance of servicing your client and really understanding their business and their industry. So I loved it. But I was antsy. I did that for 6 or 7 years. I was antsy and I raised my hand to go international. And now my dreams of going international were I was going to go to London or I was going to go to Paris, right? Something glamorous. And they came back to me and said, "Hey, Pam, how about Russia?"
That's like getting sent to Siberia, right? Like
Literally.
You're going to France and they're sending you to Siberia.
And let's remind everybody like when this was 1995.
Wow.
The Soviet Union had just fallen in 1991.
Right.
So there was so much optimism about what Russia was going to become, a free democracy, a great consumer place. And so I went there to run our media business. And it was the best experience I ever had, hands down. It was the toughest.
Yeah.
But I had a CEO who used to say, anything is possible, everything is difficult. And that kind of became my mantra kind of through my career, that if you had a vision and you had the will to get something done, there was a way to get it done. You needed relationships, you needed strategy, you needed, partners and all of that, but you could get it done. When I came back, I wanted another challenge after 3 years of living in Russia. And I went to the buying side. And I ran the P&G AOR from an investment side for the next 10 years.
Wow.
And that was really phenomenal.
10 years on anything in this industry is a lifetime.
It is a lifetime. But the great thing about that part of my journey is that I started on P&G and we were the TV AOR, and they were a TV first, very traditional advertiser. But the industry was evolving, right? Mm-hmm. They got first into data, and we were the first person to do optimization and reach-based planning. And then as digital started emerging, we pulled in the digital part to our AOR, and that started with display. And P&G was very early into programmatic. And if you remember, they had their own solution.
Yes.
So, got to learn about that. And then as digital video emerged, P&G, who you would think would be the last person to want to jump in first because they were at that time all about efficiency PMs and and that kind of stuff, we convinced P&G that this is where the advertising world was moving and they needed to get in. And P&G is smart, right? And
Oh,
you
yeah.
provide a convincing argument, and you lay out the facts, and you have the right people on your team. I had an amazing digital team. For many of you know Adam Gerber. I brought Adam Gerber in
Yes.
to
We
kind
love
of lead kind of P&G's foray into digital.
that.
And so we did this mandate that everyone on P&G had to spend 1.5% of their TV money on digital video, right? 1.5% is a pretty small amount. But when
Right.
you take that in aggregate for what the scale that was for P&G, we
Yep.
now became the biggest player in digital video overnight,
Yep.
because they saw where things could go. And that just kind of unleashed opportunities, and really rose my curiosity. And from there, I then expanded the role to other clients in the agency, and agency management. I then wanted to see the sales side of the environment. So I did consulting for big media companies about how they could sell their digital assets along with their traditional assets. I then went to ad tech at Amobi, learned really all about the programmatic side, all the challenges with privacy and identity. And then I was like, what's the next thing out there?
And boom.
And I raised my hand. I put it out on my LinkedIn network that I was looking for the next role, and boom, like that day I heard from you.
Seek and you shall find, right?
That's right.
Well, what I love about your story is, very much like my story too, led by curiosity. Like, I just wanted to know what it's like on this side of the fence, or what it's like to do this, or which has also led me to very interesting turns and twists in my career. But I remember you from those P&G days, because I was at AOL at the time, and P&G was one of my accounts, and MediaVest was my single biggest agency. So we did big upfronts on P&G. And I agree with what you're saying, that smart marketers, not frivolous, like everything has to make good business sense, but willing to put their toe in and try it out.
Yeah.
And I think to this day, they've been an industry leader on so many things, because they just look at it and say, this is a smart thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And they step in and do it. So let's talk a little bit about the role, here at IAB. So I saw you were posting, David Cohn and I were talking about what we really needed in this role, that we really needed someone who knew the industry first and foremost, someone who had strong point of view on things, someone who wasn't afraid to express that point of view, even if it meant ruffling feathers a little bit here and there, which we do from time to time here at the IAB, someone who had a strong enough view of the industry that they can dial in so many different areas, which is one of the things I love about my job, is that I really get to sit in the middle of everything that's going on. And as the chief strategy officer, even more critical that you have a keen understanding of all the areas where there's either opportunity or friction, that we need to step in and try and provide help to help the industry continue. What are some of the things that let's start with things that are most exciting for you in this role? Because I reached out to you, I saw your note, and I said, Pam, how does Chief Strategy Officer at IAB sound? And you replied back like the dream job. What were you seeing in that said, oh my God, this is where I want to go next?
When you look at the media environment right now, what I see opportunity everywhere, right? But opportunity that's not bound by guardrails and standards and operational excellence becomes chaos in the Wild West.
Yeah.
And we all experienced that at the start of, display and original digital video and all. And I saw, my experience lending a great voice to how we can be excited and lean in to what's new, but know what the guardrails are and the standards that need to be in place to make it successful. And I think from a personal point of view, what I believe in really strongly is the democratization of digital assets and commerce and content, that everybody, regardless of economic level or social status, has the ability and access to content and information, news and entertainment, sports that will enrich their life.
Mhm.
And we have to keep a free, open internet to do that.
Yeah.
And and to be able to be part of the solution to create the standards that allow access to keep everybody knowledgeable, informed, entertained, I see as a really great business and professional path growth that aligns with my personal passions and desires for growth.
On that, we are 100% aligned. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's what I saw in you too, the first time we spoke, is that I think that is something that I know I feel very strongly about. So does David. And, that's the thing we try and instill in everybody here, is that what the work we're doing is really important. Like literally democracy depends on it. It depends on us making sure that we can support a free and open internet system. And that happens through advertising. There isn't a better business model to enable free and open than an ad-supported ecosystem.
Right. And while it is the best, business model that we have to keep that dream and belief alive, it's also hard work to make the advertising business model work for all parts of the ecosystem, right?
Right.
And standards are part of it, but understanding the value that you're getting from individual channels and the research that comes along with that to prove the power. As a consumer and a professional, I am extremely high on podcasting, right? I think it is a great way to receive news and information, and you can find that voice that resonates with you.
Yes.
Right. And so I love the idea of being able to touch all of these new digital channels that are emerging, and being able to combine the opportunities that the channels have with the right business models. And one thing I was really passionate about when I was on the agency side, and when I was seeing the decline of linear television, when I started in the business, I don't know, average prime rating was a 7 or something like that, an 8, a 9, a 10.
Yes.
Today, it's like a 0.4, right? And there are many reasons for the decline of linear television, but I strongly believe that one of those declines is because we corrupted the viewing experience, and we made far too many non-content minutes as part of your viewing experience. And that was in part to keep CPMs down and all of that. I think that all needs to be reevaluated in the digital world.
Yeah.
And, I think the goal in some ways is you pay the highest price you can to keep the smallest amount of commercialization attached to revenue and attached to content. And that balance is really hard. And you need to get advertisers to buy in. You need to get platforms to buy in. You need everybody to buy in to the goal of keeping platforms a great consumer experience.
Right.
And I am hoping that through all of the work that the IAB does to, highlight opportunities and potentials in different business models and standards is something that I can help drive to make the experience as best as it can for all consumers.
Yeah. And I think to your point, we are now seeing a move, maybe because signals are starting to get harder to find, and it's only going to get more complicated with more policy and privacy regulation coming at us. And content is now becoming king again, so now it's, having smart, good, creative, and attention economy is what everyone's talking about right now. That's going to require exactly what you're talking about. You're going to just become wallpaper if you background images on a screen to a consumer, if you aren't thinking about great user experiences and ways to engage. The consumer has so many options. When I first started off in TV, you had 3. And then your UHF channel.
Yeah.
Cable was literally just starting. CNN came to my campus at Syracuse and recruited people to run the office in Russia, to follow the president around. We're talking like a 20-year-old graduating who was assigned to follow the president. I mean, it was like the best training ground. People like living in, in Beirut, running the office there, and they're 22. But, so today it's just insane. And I agree with you. I love podcasting because there's just literally zero barrier to entry. Anybody can just grab a microphone and put something out there. Like, anybody can be a media company today, and they are. The whole creator economy is insane. So I'm with you. It's a really exciting time, loaded with opportunity, and at the same time, we've never had more headwinds coming at us. And I think the IAB has never had a more important role than we do today to help navigate all of that. So what are some of the things that you're going to be double clicking in, dialing up, double clicking, stepping in even more so? Is it standards? Is it insights around consumer behavior? Where do you see a lot of your energy going to help move the industry forward?
Right. I think the great opportunity and the biggest challenge for me right now is that there's so many places that I could focus on. And the challenge is, what are those places that need focusing? So I'm going to say that number one, I think the biggest conversation going on in the industry right now is measurement, right?
Not a new conversation by any means.
Absolutely not a new conversation, but because of all of the changes going around in the ecosystem, it is a totally new way that we need to think about measurement. And so I want IAB to have a really strong point of view on what that right measurement is, and create guidelines that help advertisers and agencies understand what the choices are, what the trade-offs are, and what like the building blocks need to be so we can have kind of a cohesive industry. I think the challenge that goes along with that is are the walled gardens. And there are ones that were created that way from their inception. And then there are the more traditional media agencies that are beginning to create their own walled gardens to try to keep consumers inside of their own ecosystem. And I think we have to find the right balance to allow businesses to grow based on their independent strategies that they are, but also to have enough sharing of information that we make the ecosystem be able to move forward. And so, I would love to change the conception of walled gardens from walled gardens to picket fences, right? You still can enclose your data and protect consumer privacy and consent rights and all of that, but you need to have some holes in your fence that allow API connections that give some minimum standard of understanding about how the consumer crosses different walled gardens and different publishers. And I think we have to convince the sell side that sharing a certain amount of that data actually benefits them, it benefits the advertiser, and in the end, it benefits the digital ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that is one of the hardest and biggest challenges we have at the IAB, is getting all the different constituents to see the value of the good of the whole versus what's just good for them. And, the thing is that we fortunately sit in a space, and the way our business runs is bringing these folks together through committees and councils and working groups. That becomes the forum in which we can have these conversations and say, hey, if we don't come together and do these things, first of all, someone else will do it for us, or this could be a potential byproduct, or this could be a potential outcome. None of us want to see that. So, give a little here, give a little there. I do find that one of the biggest challenges, but yet one of the most exciting things about this role is trying to bring the industry together. We are the big tent, and they don't always play nicely.
Right. And and when I thought about, coming to the IAB, I think the big tent is what made it so attractive.
Yeah.
Right. It's that we can get everyone around the table to have those conversations, as opposed to being isolated, for just agencies talking to themselves and marketers talking to themselves. I think having everybody around the table to express what they need, what they want, and where they're willing to give. And that's our role, to paint that picture about how collaboration raises all boats and drives us forward. And that's what I see as a really interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. So again, I'm so happy to hear we're aligned on that, since we have to work together. So tell me a little bit. I always believe that there's, we're all human. We make mistakes in our life. Sometimes they're massive, sometimes they're tiny, but often they're the best teachers. Is there a mistake or a decision you made that, looking back, you say, all right, that sucked that happened. However, because of that, I learned something valuable? Do you have a lesson like that, or situation?
I mean, I have little lessons like that every day.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm going to say that the most important thing I learned was to take leaps of faith. And that is in your own personal career development.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means going for a role that is a vertical jump. Sometimes it means it's a horizontal move. But the courage to navigate your own career in a way that keeps pushing you forward. And I don't want to call this a mistake I made, but it's definitely a lesson learned. And that is, the first thing is that I stayed at the agency I started at for 25 years, which no one in the industry does, right?
There are a few, but very few. David Cohn stayed a very long time, in his role on the agency side.
And I think that had a lot of great benefits for me, right? Every few years, when I got bored of what I was doing, I was able to raise my hand and get a new type of role. But I also think there's incredible value from hearing different points of view, from different ways people think and act. And that only grows your mind. So while I have no regrets, really, that I stayed at one agency for 25 years, I do think that I wish I would have given more thought to planning out my career earlier on. I don't think I gave enough thought to all of the opportunities that were out there. And some of that comes from fear, right? About making a change. The other thing it comes to, and I know that you have great passion for this, it's about how do you balance your personal life and your work life? And I have a son who has some special needs and has to attend a boarding school during the week to achieve his success. And I needed to be present and visible and active in my child's life, and the stability of being at an organization who knew me, who valued me, allowed me the freedom that I needed to be the best mom I could be. And I think it's really important that you fulfill all of the different roles in your life to the best of your capability. And what I needed to do was to have that stability in my professional life to deal with all the chaos that was going on at home.
Yeah, I think the last few years that's become very present for most people, because they've had all this time home now. I know for me, I don't know how I commuted every day for literally decades, because now it's just like I have to go in the city again, really, even though, I'm living further away. Even without that, it's just, I find it exhausting versus, every day I was doing this without a thought. And I think you're right, there's little lessons every day. I'll share one that stayed with me. When I was young in my sales career, I was working on a big deal and I thought I had it. I was like, I got this, I'm going to close this baby, da, da, da. And as things started moving along, stuff started going sideways and suddenly not so much. And then it got to a point where we didn't get it. And I had to go and tell the powers that be that we didn't get this big deal. And what I learned from that lesson is you can win alone, but you cannot fail alone. And what I should have done was raise the, hey guys, I need help. This is starting to not look good. I thought this, but now this is happening. And I should have pulled people in and said, let's talk about it, brainstorm, help me figure this out. I realized that I was overwhelmed and thought I had it and was too embarrassed to admit that, I'm not sure about this. And instead of asking for help, it just failed. And that was such a huge learning for me, because ever since then, I'm like, the slightest little thing. In fact, I do that on whether it's win or lose. I bring everybody in, let's win this together. And if we don't, we did our best and we didn't get it, but it's not me anymore. It's we. And that was a really big learning for me that I've taken with me ever since.
Yeah, I've learned that lesson in a similar way. And I know one of the things we wanted to talk about too were kind of influences, in my career. And so I will say that the biggest influence in my career was Donna Speciale. When I was running investment on P&G, she was the head of investment at MediaVest. And she came in after I had been on P&G for 5 or 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't need your help. I got this. I'm running it. P&G is really complicated. You go spend your time worrying about everybody else and I'll run P&G. And she kind of let me do it for a little while until she got her sea legs. And then she called me into her office one day and she said, Pam, I'm your boss and I'm accountable for P&G as much as you are.
Yep.
And you have 2 choices. You can let me in and I will be your biggest advocate and I will help you and we will win together, or you don't let me in and you're not going to have a successful career here. Woo. And someone who was that straightforward, I had never had a boss who was that straightforward with me.
Well, do now. I'm just saying, okay? Until now.
And it scared the shit out of me, right? I was like, oh my God.
You said it like it is. I get it.
And I sat back and I realized that she had skills and knowledge and relationships that could make me so much more successful.
Right.
And so I had to learn the lesson of not being so black and white.
Yes.
That the wins really come in the gray.
Yeah.
And they come in partnership more than they come as a single contributor.
Yep. Well, I have to say, as your partner in all of this, that I could not be more excited to have you not only for just for me personally to have you as my like right arm and buddy in making all this happen, my partner in crime, if you will, but also what you're going to be able to do for the industry. And we share that passion, we share that vision, and there's a lot of work to be done. And I know that you and I are both ready to roll up our sleeves and dive in and see what we can do to make a difference. So welcome to the IAB. We're out of time, but maybe we'll come back again in 6 months and say, all right, so how do you feel now, right? And maybe we'll look back and reflect. Anyway, thanks, Pam, for taking the time to talk to me today on IAB There. I'm glad everyone had a chance to get to know you better. I couldn't be more excited to have you on the team. Thank you, everybody, for dialing in. I'm Cheryl Goldstein. Thanks for watching.